Okay, so okay, Prof, you can just go on with the presentation so that we don't take time while I sort myself out with the. I'm sorry, the other source of network just tripped off. But Prof, you have the platform. You can make your presentation.
Okay. I want to get that.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, you can see the screen? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation. It's just the first opportunity I have after the publication of the book, Escaping Poverty and Unemployment in Africa, a Flagship Strategy. I start the book in its preface with a quotation. The future of Africa is one of the most important issues facing humanity. I think this is a very insightful quote from one Professor Howard French. I find it insightful for three good reasons. The first is that African population is growing quite fast. While the population of other countries of the world are declining, that of Africa is growing. The estimate is that each woman produces 4.5 children in Africa, while other countries are trying to see how their fertility can rise above the replacement level of 2.1 per children per woman. So Africa is growing very fast. And it is estimated that by 2050, about 2.5 billion Africans will be in the planet. With the implication is that Africa has emerged as the epicenter of global poverty. This was indicated by Paul Collier in his book, The Bottom Billion, in 2007. The third is that Nigeria, with the current estimated population of 234 million, that's 2024, has emerged as a country with the highest concentration of poor people in Africa. So you can say that Nigeria is also the epicenter of African poverty. The National Bureau of Statistics has estimated that 133 million people are facing multidimensional poverty. That was in 2015. Now, with the situation in the economy, the number is much higher. And of course, the Brookings Institution had in 2008 noted that Nigeria is the world's global poverty capital, the global capital of the world. We note that, or I note that, this calculation captured only the absolute component of the poverty. Now, the fight against global poverty had been a long, protracted battle, as reflected by its prioritization in both the UN Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. Both documents prioritize poverty by making sure poverty is number one concern. It should, however, be noted that poverty and unemployment are twins, representing the two faces of the same bad coin. Unemployment has been noted as the major cause of poverty, because no one can escape poverty without going through the route of productive employment, whether it is self-employment or paid employment. Besides, whenever unemployment increases, poverty will also increase pari passu. An example is Nigeria's case of mass unemployment and mass poverty. But over several decades, programs and projects designed to fight poverty in Africa have ended in failure. In 1998, two international organizations, the UNDP and ILO, embarked on an experiment to find a lasting solution to poverty and unemployment in Africa by funding a program which was called Jobs for Africa, JFA. I was privileged to serve as senior employment and poverty expert in a three-man team that executed the project for 3 years in 10 African countries. Now, the experience gained in JFA, Jobs for Africa project, it is that experience that inspired my response to the continuing poverty and unemployment by writing Escaping Poverty in Africa, a strategic agenda for Nigeria. That book was published in 2012. Now, 10 years after that, that is this year, it would have been 10 years, poverty has worsened by morphing into mass poverty and mass unemployment, and both have posed existential threats to many African countries, especially Nigeria. Now, let me briefly summarize the key contents of Escaping Poverty and Unemployment in Africa, the Flagship strategy. I have abbreviated the title of the book to EPWA-FS, as I'm sure you've noted. Now, the key contents of EPWA-FS can be summarized as follows, but I'm going to lay emphasis on the Flagship strategy because this is the core. The main reasons for failures of poverty programs in Africa have been indicated. And of course, this is we can be traced to the unstrategic choices in the conceptualization and implementation of poverty fighting programs. Now, EPWA-FS divides its message into 5 parts, covering 19 chapters. The key contents of each part and the respective chapters can briefly be highlighted as follows. The part 1 of EPWA-FS, with 6 chapters, covers the following issues. I'm going to be very brief. The nature and concept of poverty and its typology, along with associated growth and development myths, are analyzed. The typology of poverty starts by showing different types of, about 9 types of poverty, from relative poverty, absolute poverty, temporary poverty, chronic poverty, knowledge poverty, and so on. One thing I want to point out in this chapter is the relationship that has been canvassed between poverty and growth of the economy. There is an hypothesis called inverted U hypothesis that was initiated by Kuznets, an economics Nobel laureate, 1971 Nobel laureate in economics. Now, Kuznets hypothesized an inverted U, and this relates to poverty and the growth of the economy. He simply said that as the economy grows, poverty will grow. But after some time, poverty will be reduced. And that's because as the economy grows, the rich would invest. And after some time, the poor will begin to enjoy through what has been called a trickling down process. This hypothesis was validated with the US data that USNET used. But when applied to developing countries, the hypothesis fell flat, suggesting that policy-wise, growth and poverty reduction are incompatible. But empirical evidence has shown that they are compatible. The myth has been debunked statistically and empirically with the experiences of nations like China and Vietnam, where growth and poverty are compatible. So it is possible to grow the economy while at the same time reducing poverty. Now, poverty attack has been profiled from MDG, that's Millennium Development Goal, to SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal. Data have been shown in several chapters of the book. But let me point out Nigeria's exceptionalism in Africa's poverty profile. Nigeria is very exceptional. Over the last 2 decades, the country continues to register the highest concentration of poverty. So it was the biggest economy until 2 years ago, but it also had the biggest poverty. The estimated absolute poverty by the National Bureau of Statistics in 2015 was 133 million. Now, the estimate is that poverty affects over 200 million Nigerians. And as the economic situation is deteriorating, I'm sure that number would be more than that. But Ethiopia's population is 126.5 million in 2023. Egypt's population, that's the third most populated country in Africa, is 112.7 million. So you see, the mere concentration of poverty numbers in Africa exceeds the actual population of these other populous African countries. That is why Nigeria is number one. It sounds embarrassing, but this is real. Now, the multidimensional causes of poverty in Africa have been analyzed, showing its 30 phases. Poverty has 30 phases, and I have shown each phase. We don't have time to describe each of the phases, but it was important to present these phases because sometimes it sounds abstract. It sounds abstract when we don't paint the picture. But the prime cause of all this is unemployment. Unemployment is the mother of all the phases. In chapter 6, I present 18 reasons why unemployment is such a dangerous economic pathology. Unemployment has not been closely or rigorously analyzed. The 18 reasons have been outlined. We don't have time to go into them, but let me point out just a few. There is something called Okun's law in economics. Now, Okun's law is the consideration that 1% increase in unemployment will cause 3% loss in output in the economy. So imagine an economy like Nigeria's, whose estimated unemployment is 33%. Multiply that by 3, you have 99% loss in output in the economy. So unemployment seriously affects economic growth. It generates inequality in income and opportunities in the country. It creates brain drain. It creates political corruption. In fact, political corruption happens in a country like Nigeria, where politicians who have the opportunity think that there is no other alternative but politics. So politics becomes a do or die affair. This is caused by unemployment, not to talk of other social vices like terrorism that we are seeing happening in Nigeria. Still continuing in part 2 of EPA-FS, the approaches to fighting poverty and unemployment have been addressed. Traditional approaches in which Nigerian experience had been the focus have shown that orthodox poverty management experience, orthodox experiences have shown there is a problem. There is no success. But I will concentrate on chapter 9, which is the explication or analysis of the FS strategy. That is the hello. I hope I'm being heard.
Yes, we can hear
Over
you, Prof.
140. Hello.
We can hear you, Prof. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Over 104 different programs and projects have been put in place for fighting poverty in Nigeria in the last 38 years. But they have failed woefully in reducing unemployment and poverty. Instead, poverty and unemployment have grown massively and exponentially. Why is this the case? The key reasons revealed by the survey observations and empirical analysis are as follows. There are conceptual flaws. Non-recognition of some symbiotic relationship between unemployment and poverty has led policymakers to mount different programs and projects tackling each of them separately. This standalone program approach has led to the loss of synergy. Scientists call it synergy, but economists call it multiplier impact. That synergy or multiplier impacts have been lost by standalone programs. The two problems are related, poverty and unemployment. And this was apparent in our survey of the 10 African countries we undertook during the Jobs for Africa program, country after country. Programs are separated. They should not. The next reason is failure to establish key linkages with relevant stakeholders in the poverty fight. Key stakeholders include investment programs and projects that people undertake. There is also a failure to engage complementary infrastructure, to also engage macroeconomic stability. All these things are neglected in the process of fighting poverty. They also ignore the critical success factors in the fight. One such is the inclusion of good governance framework to ensure accountability of output and outcome. Now, in part 2 of EPA-FS, the chapter 9 of part 2 addresses the extant orthodox poverty fighting strategies, which are always deployed. Two of them have been assessed and found wanting, found to be very ineffective in addressing growing mass poverty and mass unemployment facing most African countries. Again, Nigerian example have been shown. The first is the use of minimum wage route to address poverty. Analysis of this strategy has shown that Since minimum wage was put in use in Nigeria in 1974, that's at the beginning, the end of the war, civil war, it has never succeeded in alleviating poverty, let alone reducing or eliminating it. For the reasons, one, that the wages approved have often fallen short of being a living wage. Two, they have never been adjusted for inflation. Inflation eats away the value of such wages. And thirdly, they have never been enforced, especially in the private sector and the informal economy. Another mechanism used is social security mechanism for fighting poverty. Now, with the exception of Botswana and Senegal in Africa, all African countries lack this mechanism. They've not been put in place. I'm talking about social security mechanism. Nigeria's attempt to do so by setting up National Working Committee on Social Security since 2008 remains work in progress. Not much has been done there. The third traditional orthodox method is the so-called conditional cash transfer, CCT. Now, following the success of CCT in many Latin American countries like Brazil and Chile, some African countries have adopted CCT. This includes Morocco and Nigeria. Nigeria have attempted to use the scheme to tackle poverty. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, the program has been undermined by governance deficit issues, including mission derailment. There is also absence of credible data on poverty. And most importantly, we have corruption. Recall the recent firing of the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, where the program was located. So it has therefore failed. In fact, conditional cash transfer was meant to deal with pockets of poverty, not mass poverty or mass unemployment. So nothing meaningful has been done. So, ladies and gentlemen, I move to part two, in which the flagship strategy is stressed. This is actually what I consider the meat of the book. So let me talk about flagship strategy. FS. Let me summarize the main reasons why this had to come in place. The main reason for failures of past approaches are these. There is absence of linkage of poverty fight with employment programs, given the fact that both unemployment and poverty are twins, as I have suggested. You see, no sustainable poverty elimination or reduction program will survive without passing through a lucrative job. So jobs, jobs, jobs. These are very important in fighting poverty. The second is inadequate attention paid to investment as a prime driver of poverty reduction and employment. Historical experience shows that all successful stories of mass poverty reduction are made possible by high-profile investment programs. Examples include East Asian tiger economies, Taiwan, even Japan, and China recently. They invest 30 to 50% of their GDP for several years, not just for 1 year. But in Africa, the investment GDP ratio is very low, single digits. Some falling to 5% in some bad years. You cannot address poverty with that level of investment. There is also the deployment of standalone programs. I have mentioned this earlier to tackle separately the challenges of unemployment and poverty. These deprive the programs of the much needed synergy, the multiply effect. Now, there is also the absence of generic strategy a strategy that would capture all types of poverty, from relative poverty, absolute poverty, capability poverty, intellectual poverty, and so on. So there should be a strategy that captures all types of poverty. So the proposed flagship strategy is a cocktail of three policy elements. Simple. The first is putting in place a maximum full employment-driven macroeconomic stability. This forces the central bank to commit to maintaining full employment by deploying tools of low interest rate, stable exchange rate, low inflation rate, all targeted at a chosen low single rate of unemployment. This would be necessary to do along with fiscal policies. The fiscal policies that should go along with central bank activities would be tax policies, tax reduction in some cases, to boost the supply side of the economy. Well, let me explain further that we have not learned from most African countries have not learned from the experience of a country like United States of America about unemployment or employment. You recall that after the Great Depression of the 30s, in 1946, to be specific, American government set up or passed Full Employment Act, 1946. Since then, employment has been taken very seriously in this country. And in 1977, that act was revisited by giving the Fed a dual mandate of maintaining full employment and price stability. And of course, you remember that every Friday of every month, employment statistics generated by the economy are published. That means employment is very key to any macroeconomic management because it is what holds the system together. But in most African countries, employment is not considered explicitly as a mandate of the central bank. So that has to be done, putting in place the maximum of full employment-driven macroeconomic stability. It will force the central bank to look at the supply side of the economy, which is now being neglected. The second element of the flagship strategy is activation and deployment of transformational entrepreneurship. Recently, a distinction has insightfully been made between peasant entrepreneurs and transformational entrepreneurs. Of course, the peasant entrepreneurs go into business just for survival, not so much for growth. However, a transformational entrepreneur would be interested in growing his company using creative and innovative talents and skills. It is this type of entrepreneurs that grow the economy as well as wealth, making profit, but in the process, reducing poverty. But out there, anybody is regarded as an entrepreneur. They're entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And a distinction should be made so that if entrepreneurs are to be supported, they should be transformational entrepreneurs. So targeting full employment and poverty reduction requires the empowerment and deployment of transformational entrepreneurs. We don't have time to talk about why we don't have much of transformational entrepreneurs in Africa. I think the simple reason is that the colonizers laid more emphasis on administration, and we're not even interested so much in business growing. That is the background. But now we know better, and we know what should be done. But thirdly, the third element of flagship strategy is deploying investment for poverty reducing employment program or paradigm. What does this mean? IPRE, in recognition of the primacy of the quality and quantum of investment in making a difference in addressing unemployment and poverty reduction. So the adoption of IPRE strategy uses ready to engage transformational entrepreneurs in undertaking business ventures in selected sectors of the economy with high employment content. In economic parlance, we say these must be sectors with high employment elasticity. This will generate jobs and reduce poverty, creating investment-friendly environment. And the process of investment will be repeated as the positive impact grows, not only on the economy, but also on the social system. There is a diagram I put here to illustrate this. That first, you get empowered transformational entrepreneurs, engage them. The next box there is investment in several sectors of the economy, and it will go to generate employment and reduce poverty. The next is to create income and generate wealth for the middle class. This goes to reduce poverty and inequality, and the process continues because it will have impact on the social system. However, if there is disinvestment in the economy, the opposite process, the vicious process takes place. Investment keeps declining, poverty keeps increasing, unemployment keeps increasing, and that is what you have. So these three elements form the flagship. And if any country, especially developing countries, emphasize these three elements, definitely poverty and unemployment would be addressed. Let me briefly summarize why this flagship strategy is compelling. The first is that IPRE, the investment for poverty reducing employment paradigm, is a core of this strategy and has been found to be theoretically and empirically robust. All the computable general equilibrium models built to calibrate the variables come out with highly credible parameters in all the 10 countries that we visited. The Nigerian component was done by colleagues Akiniwayemi, Professor Akiniwayemi and Adedi Kinju, and have been published in the leading journal of National Nigerian Economic Society, the Nigerian Journal of Economic and Social Studies in 2002. The second is that the core experiment, the Jobs for Africa, which inspired flagship strategy, was adjudged successful by a team of independent international consultants hired by UNDP and ILO, who were the sponsors of the project. They showed that within the 3 years, this had been a very successful experiment. The third result, there is contemporary historical experience of countries like South Korea and China deploying high investment GDP ratios led by transformational entrepreneurs have shown that they have created wealth, they have reduced mass unemployment or created mass employment and reduced poverty. China is reputed to have taken 600 million people out of poverty during its high growth decade, just some 2 decades ago. Now, it is feasible to build the critical success factors around the flagship strategy, like efficient infrastructure, good governance, and accountability when the flagship strategy is implemented. And lastly, the debut of this book, Flagging the Flagship Strategy, I consider is timely, especially for a country like Nigeria, because it is facing mass poverty and mass unemployment, constituting existential crisis for Nigeria. And if this strategy is used the two vices, the two crises could be addressed, and the social vices, which they fundamentally cause, would be indirectly addressed. But unfortunately, the economic component is not seen. What we are seeing is how we can get guns to push down these people. Now, I don't know whether, if there is still time, I can just briefly go through the rest of the book.
Yeah, we have like 5 minutes because I know that the next chapters are dealing with the practical aspects of identifying sectors and institutions, which I think we can also benefit from, Prof. Yeah, in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah. Let me just go through the remaining segments by showing that, you see, the application of the Flagship strategy is illustrated by highlighting 7 sectors of the Nigerian economy. They could be applied there, and we have full employment and greatly reduce poverty. Now, this is in part 3 of the book. There is the natural resource base. This includes Nigeria's demographic profile, which provide the youth demographic dividends, which is yet to be leveraged for wealth creation and unemployment reduction. You'll find that Nigeria's demographic profile shows that male and female are equally divided in terms of population. This is yet to be exploited. There is also the oil reserve, estimated to last for 40 years, whose extant production and whose extant production are hampered by corruption and waste. Nigeria's gas resources is estimated to be the 7th largest in the world. And production again has been hampered by governance deficit. Even as there is very high global demand for gas presently. And Nigeria has 44 different solid minerals distributed throughout each state of the Federation, including Abuja. But these exploitations are left to informal sector operators who collaborate with corrupt politicians. So the nation has lost the benefit of producing this in a formal way and for people to benefit. Nigeria would be a mining hub if these 44 minerals, some of them rare minerals, are exploited. Another escape route is through investment in infrastructure. The investment in infrastructure is foundational. It's foundational. So we divide infrastructure into physical, social, institutional. But the main problem is financing. And the book has suggested the public-private sector partnership. Such models could be used in financing this infrastructure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Escape route. Huh?
Sorry, Prof. We have like 3 minutes more, Prof.
Okay. Poverty escape route through jigging education, technology, and innovation system. There is also the escape route through agriculture and poverty agriculture. The opportunities are immense. There is industrialization and trade routes which should be exploited, and there are many opportunities. One of which is Opportunity African Growth and Opportunity Act, which President Nixon, not Nixon, I think it was one of the presidents who gave it to Africa. There is, lastly, the use of environmental management as exit route to poverty. Now, the book closes by considering the role of the states as an anchor to all these programs, the role of non-state, like the individuals and the NGOs, the development partners. But finally, The book closes by focusing attention on individual contribution. Individuals should accept responsibility for their poverty situation and make use of available opportunities rather than give excuses or try to shift the blame on others or realize that the whole thing is undoable. So if these strategies are taken and implemented, I think we can say goodbye to poverty and unemployment. Thank you for your audience.
Thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful expose on a very important topic, according to the experience that I have, not only in Nigeria, but across Africa.
Yes.
Just a brief summary before I hand over the platform to Professor Lawani. You started by telling us that growing the economy does not necessarily eradicate poverty, and you also took us through the different challenges in terms of the efforts that have been made and how they have failed. Isolated intervention, lack of multiplier effect, exclusion of key stakeholders, and the like. And you now emphasize the fact that there needs to be a transformational approach in the eradication of poverty by giving us the EPREP model, which is the investment poverty reduction, reducing employment paradigm. Investment poverty reducing employment paradigm. Thank you very much for that, Prof. I'll now invite Professor Lawani to give us his own intervention based on his reading of the book. Professor Lawani.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Phil. Prof, I want to salute you. I want to thank you for giving us the blessing of this work. I feel highly incompetent to follow after you on the presentation of this book. But I want to say one thing, and that is anybody who is conscious about the problems we have on the continent, and specifically in Nigeria, who has the blessing or the privilege of interacting with you and sharing a bit of the story, of your story and the work you have done, can only be inspired. And I am inspired. And I know we've had conversations in the past. I have a copy of at least 2 of your books now. And this one, I was compelled to, because of this presentation today, to read faster than I would have liked. And I'm not doing any review. I'm just going to discuss my 1 or 2 highlights very quickly, and then I'll let the question and answer session follow. Let me just lay a quick preface and share my screen and show something that made this book strike at the very core of some of the arguments that I have made in the past concerning the exit ramp for Africa out of this highway we are on to doomsday.
Yeah.
So
Please, Professor Umo will have to stop sharing his screen if you want to share yours.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Prof, can you stop sharing?
You want me to stop sharing?
Yes. Just I want to show something very quickly from something, a work I had done some years ago that made this book and your work very striking to me, because I had gone on a research path, completely parallel to the work you have done, but with the same idea, with the same motivation to unravel this box, to identify strands wherever possible that we can then relate back to the conditions on the continent. Yeah. And I found in my research that we seem to have been overwhelmed by our reliance on government and governance structures to pull us out. And I'm not saying that, like you said in part 4 of the book, the role of the stakeholders, where you identify state and non-state actors that you alluded to in your conclusion, that I agree with that government has a part to play, and that the market hierarchies we have in place should propel our development and hopefully increase our level or rate of employment. But what I found was that the deficit in education and the deficit in propagating the proper narrative of the average African has stymied our mental capacity to produce and to be innovative. So I stumbled on that strand, which then led me to my thinking on the bigger issues around decolonization, which is another conversation and another matter for collaboration between I and Philip. But I want to show something very quickly, and then where do I start? I share my entire screen, or I'm not sure. Okay, let me share my entire screen, and then see if I can find. Okay, so I published this work in 2019. We called it The Strategic Imperative for Citizen Involvement in Wealth Creation, the Context of Africa as a Developing Continent. So the article, I think, has a paywall behind it, but I have a PDF copy of it. I'm not sure. Can you see my screen? Can you see the PDF?
Yeah, right. I can see it, but can you enlarge it for my eyes?
Okay. Let me make it bigger here. Oh, okay. Oh, my screen is frozen. Okay, let me go back and see if I can. Oh, okay. Okay, I have to stop to be able to have to go back and share it. This is it. Okay. Honestly, the way they make changes to this technology, it's hard to.
Well, you can just give me
No,
the
but it's
gist.
okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
So
You
the
can just
point
use the
is,
Zoom function.
Give me the
yes.
gist of the.
Okay, I was going to show what I found, Prof, when you were talking about the individual and the need for us to innovate our way. I found from the United Nations and the multilateral organizations records that we had a deficit of what they called intangible capital. And that intangible capital really is the difference between the wealth we create and our natural capital and the produced capital. In other words, the quantum of resources we had under the soil and above the soil, and what we're able to generate to get revenue compared to the wealth, the accumulated wealth the country has, which includes the stock of infrastructure and the stock of investments, both locally and internationally. And for the 10 least developed countries in the world, the intangible capital were all negative ratio, including Nigeria. Matter of fact, Nigeria was at minus 71%, compared even less. In other words, countries that were poorer than us had better intangible capital than we had. So it was a complete collapse of the capacity of us to think, to produce, as soon as we agreed for the colonizers to help us structure our economy or help us put us on a path to how we could even have a system or a structure of an economy. And so the book, your book opened my eyes completely. I wish I had grabbed the one you wrote in 2012 when I was working on that research. Maybe my work would have been more robust. But so my contributions I will not have enough time to talk about it. So I want to encourage the conversation to please go on. I feel please give anybody on the platform who is interested in a copy of the book, let them send you their email, phone number. I made a commitment to buy at least one copy for anybody of this book who is interested in it. So yeah, you have my word. We'll also get 1 or 2 copies for the WATJC library on my account. Please, anybody who is interested, it's a good book for policymakers, for any politician who aspires to office in any part, at every level, should get a copy of this book. So it's my commitment to get one copy for anybody who is interested. Please make a note of that. Unfortunately, I have to rush into a curriculum meeting, but my meeting should not be more than 15, 20 minutes. I'll be back on the platform, hopefully to catch the question and answer session. And then, Prof, I'll communicate with you at the back end. Thank you very much,
Okay,
sir.
thank you so much, Dr. Wee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go,
Okay.
can I just give a quick reply?
Yes,
Yes.
A
Prof.
quick reaction. Yeah, before Dr. Wee goes, the issue of intangible capital is very close to my heart. My finding in my presidential address, I was once a president of Nigerian Economic Society, in which you are asked to give your presidential address. My presidential address in 2007 was on the knowledge economy, how Nigeria can build a knowledge economy. This has to do with intangible capital. And I also worked on this. Nigeria is very, very low in all the indices of tangible capital. And it's unfortunately, intangible capital is what is building the world now. We're talking about knowledge. Talking about knowledge. So you are very right in what you are exploring. But the issue is that this thing has not gone into the mind of our people because you have to do this through quality education. That is the way. And when quality education collapses, it's very difficult to get it across. And that is what is happening in virtually all African countries. They are underinvesting in education. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof. Like we typed in the chat box, you can always signify by raising up your hand if you want to ask questions, or just type them in the chat box if you are not comfortable speaking. But there's already a question in the chat, which I would like to take for Prof. Then maybe I'll add my own on the discussion of intangible capital so that Prof can take both, then we can go to the other questions. So the question in the chat box is, Prof, thank you so much for your presentation today. Please share with us how receptive your research was in Nigeria over the past 10 years. Thank you. That's from Sharon Ajayi. Then on intangible capital, Prof, I wanted to also mention that I've been reading in recent times about the concept of trust, especially in terms of its philosophical conceptualization. And that took me to a research that one of my friends or one of our colleagues did on trust as an informal capital or an intangible capital within trade networks across the West African corridor. And he did this in terms of access to funds and how people are able to raise capital based on the idea of trust that they have in each other. So you can give people loans without more formal arrangements. You know, you can access loans from societies such as maybe church-based societies or even communal-based societies with their own structures of how you can even retrieve some of these loans. So how do you think we can incorporate trust into the transformational agenda in terms of this flagship strategy that you've proposed to us, Prof? Thank you.
Okay, can I deal with this question before we move on?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Let me start with the issue of trust that you have raised. On the chapter of this book having to do how we can use finance and credit to boost employment and create wealth, I have talked about trust. I probably might not have used the word trust, but there are concepts in economics that capture this. The issue of giving loans and paying back loans, especially at individual level, depends on trust. It depends on trust. But trust has broken down in Nigeria, leading to people failure to pay back the loans they took. We call this thing financial intermediation crisis. That is for money to be lent out for business to take place, to be invested in. When there is financial intermediation crisis, there is a disengagement between lenders and followers. And what has happened is that there is what we call moral hazard. There is moral hazard. Moral hazard has to do with the fact that you take a loan from a bank. Of course, the bank will not follow you around, and you use the loan in doing something else, and therefore default. So there is a lot of moral hazard facing Nigerian intermediation. There is also what we call adverse selection. Adverse selection is a behavior of banks to set up very high rate of interest because of people disappointing them. And therefore, honest borrowers find it difficult to take money from the bank because the bank set the high rates in order to discourage bad borrowers, dishonest borrowers, people who don't have trust. So it's a real problem. It's a real problem. And how to solve it? We have said there should be a credit bureau. Credit bureau. America has done a very good job of that because you cannot take a loan here in New Jersey and escape to Maryland. They would follow you. Okay? They have a system that will follow you. We don't have that in Nigeria. But Central Bank was supposed to help set up credit bureau, whereby the information of everybody, those who take loans and those who don't take loans, would be there. So no matter where they run to, they would. So that is lacking in our system. So there have to be institutions built to get this trust because basically you would assume that anybody coming in to take loans is not likely to be reliable. Okay, let me stop there. And also address the issue from Mrs. Sharon Ajayi, a friend. How receptive my research in Nigeria has been in the last 10 years. Unfortunately, Sharon, I would say not much, if any. We've done this research. I'm not the only person. It looks like government is not listening, and there is nothing one can do. I hope there will come a time. We have preached this gospel through my students in graduate, undergraduate programs over the years. Maybe indirectly, some of them have, but if a government cannot allow or does not allow intellectuals to to be part of the system, it's very difficult for research findings to percolate. And these days, people don't even read. Maybe because of poverty. How many people read? So it's a challenge to all of us, how we create a government that is sensitive to knowledge. That's what I would say there. It's a challenge to all of us. Government has to listen because knowledge drives any system in today's world.
Okay.
So, Dr. Philip,
Yes, Prof. There's a question that was sent to me privately. I don't know if you permit me to also put that across. Then please, we are still expecting your hands and your questions in the chat box if you have any contributions to make. My friend, Mr. Shola, who is an insurance broker, I expect you to say something on trust, especially between yourself and your clients. So the question I have is on the African Free Continental Free Trade Area that is currently being implemented. I saw it briefly on your slide as well, Prof. So it appears that there have been a lot of challenges in terms of trans-border trade when it comes to the implementation of the CFTA. I think the Ministry for Trade and Investment in Nigeria has committed to helping to facilitate this, but there appears to be a lot of bureaucratic bottlenecks bureaucratic bottlenecks, including certain challenges when it has to do with taxes and stuff like that. So the question is, how can we maximize at different national levels, not just Nigeria at the moment, the impact of AFCFTA in different national economies in building the kind of wealth and eradicating unemployment and poverty like you mentioned? because as it were, foreigners are always benefiting from trans-border trade in Africa. We still prefer to leverage goods from outside for our everyday consumption. How do we make these things attractive and prosperous for African nations in terms of what we produce? Thank you, Prof.
I don't quite get the essence of that question. You seem to indicate that trade opportunities are not being maximized.
Yes.
I don't know whether that is what the question is. Yes, but I would agree with the person raising the issue. We are not maximizing trade opportunities. And there are many trade opportunities. But first and foremost, we have to produce. We have to produce in the economy. What I know is that even the WTO, fortunately, we have a Nigerian who is in charge, Dr. Iwela Konjo. She's the Director General of the WTO. There is a complaint that Nigerian products are not up to standard, the global standard. So our producers, our exporters should ensure the products meet the global standard. And if it doesn't meet the global standard, we are not going to be competitive. First, we don't produce much. The economy has collapsed as of now. We are not producing. And if we are not producing, especially producing quality products, trade opportunities are limited. The Nigerian economy is highly import dependent. And that is where the problem is. And that is why we keep emphasizing the gospel, diversify the economy. If we could use the money we make in oil and invest in agriculture, there are so many exportable products in agriculture we can handle. Government cannot do this. Government has to facilitate this thing for private individual entrepreneurs. And if government is creating constraints and not facilitating, we cannot make use of available trade opportunities. The only opportunities would be border trading, which of course some of them are illegal and they collaborate with the custom people and things are smuggled in or smuggled out. That is not going to lead the nation forward. That is what I would say about the trade. On the insurance, there is a problem. This problem of trust you are talking about. You undertake an insurance, pay your whatever every month. But when time comes for insurance company to compensate you for a loss, insurance companies become problematic. That is why a lot of people don't want to insure in Nigeria. There's problem of trust. So you are quite right. This trust issue has to be confronted directly. It happens in most of the financial engagements we have. Insurance is one. I'm not sure insurance is thriving in Nigeria because of this problem of trust. Okay, Philip, what is happening? I'm not seeing action.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm on the other network. The main one just tripped off. So
Okay.
my hand is up. Mr. Shola, you have the platform, please. You can speak.
Somebody speaking? I'm not hearing. I'm not hearing.
I'm trying to unmute him. Please unmute. Yeah, you can. Okay, I'm trying to unmute you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm fine now. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you
I
very
can
much.
hear you, but I can't see you.
Sorry, I'm unable to share my video. But if you can hear me, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation, and for Dr. Lawani for the presentation as well. So I'm an insurance person. Insurance and finance to be precise. So I just want to make maybe some comments or ask some questions concerning the trust and how it affects or it shapes the insurance industry in particular.
Okay.
So trust because the insurance industry from the perspective of the insurance company and the insured, insurance company now and the insured, the person buying insurance policy. So the insurance itself is based on the principle called utmost good faith. Utmost good faith. But if that trust is breached or broken, so the question is, sir, how can we ensure that trust is properly built into insurance contract right from I have observed from my own personal research is that we discuss a lot of things about finance. I told at young age they tell us to save, put money in piggy bank, do this, do that, but hardly do we have that conversation around insurance at the younger age. They tell you to save money, yes, but the money can they don't tell you how the money can get lost. And that is why insurance comes into play. So how do we ensure that right from the one young age, as we are discussing investment savings to the younger ones, we also inculcate the habit of insurance built on trust. That's number one. Number two is that how can citizen now have proper trust, as in strong trust in their leaders to bring about the common good for them? Because if there is trust, I can willingly submit my sovereignty. I can willingly submit my will. But if the trust is broken, it will be difficult for me to buy into a government program. And at the same time, it will be difficult for the government to function. It's about trust. How can we handle those two key areas that I just mentioned? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shola. These are interesting issues. I wish I were better equipped. I'm not an expert in insurance, but I had a little experience when I was once a director in one of the insurance companies, reinsurance. The issue of trust came up many times. And again, you have raised the issue of trust in government. But let me say that this issue of trust, you have mentioned the young age. The issue of trust is very fundamental, and I think it should start from the family. Family has a very important role to play in creating trust culture in young children. But, in most cases, the family or families are broken these days. But that should not be the case. Parents have a responsibility at that young age to teach their children, by example, what trust is all about. But if that teaching at the primary level, the family level, primary school, and as we go on, we would have ethics. In fact, a rational educational system these days should pay attention to ethics as a subject matter in the curriculum. Let's teach trust and the importance of trust and the consequences of breaching trust. It could be teaching could start from a very young age in the family. Because if one is thought to be untrustworthy right from the word go, until when one grows, a young man or an old man will continue to be untrustworthy. They cannot keep words. And that is very bad for the system. And it worse for the system if government itself cannot be trustworthy. In the good old days, government's word used to be as good as gold. Yes, when they say government says it, the government should do it. But if government is the first to breach the trust of the people, how can people trust government next time around? So government has a responsibility to reestablish trust where it is broken by keeping its words. And in most cases, government embarks on policies that are not well thought out and is forced to preach. And when they preach, people no longer trust government. And no amount of preaching is going to get people to trust government. And government does a lot of things that should require trust. For instance, government would float bonds, would sell bonds to collect, get citizens to buy into the bond. That is, give them money to do one thing or the other. And time comes for the repayment of interest and principal. If government does not live to its word, that is breach of trust. And next time, of course, people may not do what government does. So the trust issue is fundamental, which is an issue that government has to address. And setting up legal institutions have a great role to play here. So if legal institutions cannot be trusted to do the right thing or do the needful, then the whole system breaks down. I think one of the problems African countries are facing now is this trust, which unfortunately is an intangible thing. It's an intangible capital, as had been pointed out by Professor Uye and the rest of you. So I don't have an answer, but I can only say that trust is very key. And if there is anything we can do, I don't want to go to the aspect of religion, but the religious people can contribute in building trust, good faith. Without good faith, a lot of things would break down. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah,
Okay.
those are very insightful comments. I think, Mr. Shola, do you still have your hand up? Or is it still the previous? Okay. So there's
hello, please.
also, okay, yeah,
Hello.
please, yeah. Yes,
Okay,
please.
so I think this. Thank you very much, Prof, for that detailed response. I like that you brought another perspective to it. I think this
Okay.
my question goes to Dr. Lawani. I don't know if he said he wants to leave. He talked about intangible capital and that Nigeria ranks lowest on that scale. I would love to know the methodology behind the ranking, what makes a country rank higher than the other on that scale, and why Nigeria is in deficit, as in minus, and how can we fix that? What is the implication of tangible capital that is ranked minus for investment, for capital mobilization, for welfare of the country of the citizen, for poverty reduction? What is the implication of tangible capital that rank that so low? And the next thing will be, maybe I didn't hear him when he was describing tangible capital. What is intangible capital in the context of that ranking? intangible capital for an accountant can be different from intangible capital for an economist. I'm sure it's not there. Maybe Dr. Philip can help pass that comment across.
Yeah, no, I will communicate to him. I think what could be of help is that he has a publication on that, and he was trying to share, but I don't think he was quite successful in making us see that part of his work. But we'll request. He said he has like a PDF, so we'll request for the PDF and try to make it available to participants after the. He also said he's committed that he's going to make the book available to people that are interested. So if you're interested, is either you signify on the chat, or you reach out personally to us and try to make it, available. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if Prof has any comment on that as well.
Yeah, he was asking about the methodology for the intangible capital. The work I did on Nigeria, the knowledge economy, got some measurements in status, the country status on knowledge economy. And if I remember, some of the criteria used in measuring and comparing had to do with education, the extent to which the educational system, the quality of education given to the individuals are good. There was something on innovation. To what extent is a country investing in innovation? These are some of the, and health too, because health is an important human capital component. So these are some of the, I don't know what criteria Professor Lawani was using in his work on intangible capital. But this is very key. The issue is very key. It has to do with education and quality education for that matter. So maybe when this book or the publication of Professor Uyi is made available, this could be clearer. Okay? That's all I would say.
Thank you very much, Prof. We don't know whether there's, okay, someone is requesting for the PowerPoint presentation. So whether I could have access to it.
Yes, I can send it to you.
Okay.
I don't know which this thing.
Can you drop your email in the chat box?
I can use your email.
Okay, Prof. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll use your email and send it to you. There is nothing hidden. We want as many people as possible to have access to these issues, with the hope that eventually it will sink in. What they are saying, you are hearing that the Nigerian problem has no solution. But I think there are solutions. People just don't want to adopt the solutions.
Yeah. Is there any final question from anyone before we wrap up? We have like 5 minutes, so we can take anyone. Okay, Prof. So on this note, we have to thank you very much for your contribution to knowledge, especially the field of economics, and also helping us to develop this flagship strategy, which we hopefully be adopted by relevant by different African nations within their own context to be able to fight this problem of poverty in a very sustainable manner, and also generate wealth, based on the different models that you've projected. We thank you for the work. We hope that we keep the conversation going, and that a lot more people will be able to read about this work. And also as a center, we are hoping to continue our collaboration, beyond this lecture, to also invite you for further, for future events, to also keep educating us. Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. We thank everyone as well.
Thank you very much, Philip, for the opportunity you've given me to explain some of the issues that hanging in our minds, both for the nation and African countries and so on. But I'm wondering how many people have participated in this seminar? Do you know?
So we some people joined and left. We have roughly like 25 persons from my own count. So, but the lecture goes beyond this seminar because we're going to put it on our YouTube channel, which I'll share the link with you. And we also, so that anybody who also is interested in topic can have access. Professor Lawani is back. Good. So you're just back to time, Professor Lawani. There was a question for you on how you developed your matrix on intangible capital and the different rankings of countries, and how Nigeria ranked so low. How did you come about this? That was the question that was asked while you were away. If you could hear me, Professor Lawani. Okay, I'll need to make him unmute himself. Yeah, you can unmute now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So what I did was I didn't develop my own metrics. You know, when we do research, you try and find antecedent or precedent methods or techniques to do the work. I mean, for you to even pass muster or get the peer review process to be done. So my research led me to material from the World Bank, from the United Nations, from UNDP, United Nations Development Program, from UNECA, United Nations Economic Commission on Africa. And see, if I pull up the article, I can actually look through the references very quickly. But yes, that's what I did. I didn't develop them from scratch. I relied on previous research to get to that point. And that's what's interesting about research is you get the benefit of riding on the big shoulders of people like Prof when you do your work. So that's what I did. I didn't develop the metrics or the technique for finding those numbers from scratch. I found the formula from previous research, tried to update. The figures I had were from 2000, but I tried to update up to 2013 or 2015. I was careful to go past the Great Recession we had in 2008 to make the figures as relevant as possible. So I pushed it up to 2015, I think.
So there's a follow-up question on the implications for Nigeria being ranked so low on intangible capital, especially how this impacts on poverty reduction, maximizing welfare and investment inflow. You are muted. Oh, I have to.
Okay. So
I was going to say I was deferring to Prof to answer, and then maybe I can follow up.
No,
Okay.
I tried to talk about the indices used in developing knowledge programs. When I wrote my paper, I accessed the World Bank publication in this matter, knowledge economy measurement, comparing it to different countries. Innovation featured very highly. Investment in education featured very well, and also investment in health. Those are some of the indices the World Bank use. I don't know how they have updated it. I've not visited that area of research recently. But the issue of intangible capital is very, very real, very important. But we need our leaders to be aware of some of these things.
Yes, Prof is correct. They haven't changed the metrics much, Prof. It's still the same thing: knowledge, investments in education, and they've put a little emphasis now on they've tried to track innovation now with regard to the quantum of not necessarily new products or new services, but the registration of patents, trademarks, and things like that. That's how economies, individuals in an economy vigorously creating new things. How much was the growth of the quantum of patents and trademarks in countries in Africa and so on and so forth. But I think the one reservation I had was I still couldn't find the more or less the Africanization of it. It was still that they were expecting measures of our innovation and our knowledge growth relative to the Western world, so that we're not able to scale up our new contributions in technology to bring it to a bigger market, discounted any improvements we had. So, for example, if we localized some aspect of what's that thing called, say the Chinese brought an automobile factory to Senegal, and there was a local content of it that was exclusively based on the African technology and African ingenuity. It wasn't considered innovation, because we couldn't scale it up and say, here's what we have to sell to the world. And so I've made the argument. Matter of fact, I was in a conference with the closest contender in the last general elections in Congo, Moise Katumbi, and he was talking about his ideas on how to improve the Congolese economy if he had won the elections, based on the massive deposits of natural resources that they have in the country. And the argument that I made to him was that, you see, because the technology for those resources are not indigenous, there's no contest for your market. In other words, if the only technology for crude oil is what the West has prescribed for it, you're always going to sell to them. And so if you go back to industrial economics, Porter has said it. You have to be able to devise alternative technology for a natural resource for you to then say, I'm not selling to you, I'm selling to this person. So there's nothing else to do with cocoa apart from either eating it and spitting out the seed or using it for chocolate. You can't tell the Europeans not to price your cocoa at the price they want to. It's the bargaining power of the buyer. There's nothing else you have. There's nowhere else to sell it. So you have to find other ways, other technologies for it. Then you can now look them in the eye and say, okay, no, you cannot out-bargain me anymore because I have another buyer for this product. Or we have devised other technologies for this product, for this resource. And so we don't want to sell to you. But all the resources that are mined in Africa and sold are sold based on the technologies that these people found for the resources. We didn't find any of the technologies. The technology, the distillation of crude oil is foreign to us. It was brought to, so before they brought it, we didn't know what to do with the crude oil. The same thing with cocoa, same with rubber, same with timber, same with all the resources that are mined, cobalt, coltan in the case of Congo, semiconductor, name it. So this is the innovation they want us to do, to think hard and then find a way to make the relative bargaining power of the buyers of our natural resources less. If the bargaining power of those buyers remains strong, we will always be outbid. So they will put a price for the natural resources in the Chicago Mercantile, and that's what you will sell for. If you don't sell them to them, there's nowhere else to go. You're going to convert the resources to local use, and the local use is just eat the cocoa and spit out the seed. So that's where we are now with regard to the measures for intangible capital, is how much we are able to indigenize the technologies, especially to create other value chains for our natural resources, and not rely strictly on the current consumers or the current buyers of these resources. That's the only way we can out-bargain ourselves, out-bargain them in the transaction.
In addition to that, Prof. Lawani, I think Africa and African governments have not invested in R&D. research and development.
Yeah, it's in your book. You said
The
so in your book.
investment is very, very low.
Yeah.
And when you see all the Western countries, even China, make progress, they have heavy investment in research and development, especially when they bring in practitioners in the private sector. A lot of things could be done with respect to our products, even those products that are already in the shelf being marketed. A viable, a robust research and development program could look at indigenous products and even come out with indigenous applications of this product that we have in Africa. Our government, I still blame government, are not taking a lead in investing in research and development using African scholars. Most African scholars have the capability in science and in other areas of research. You do this thing. So ask, how much are they investing in R&D? Sometimes zero, because they don't believe in it. They believe everything is ready-made and can be imported. How can we move forward if we don't take a look at our own natural endowment God has given us and see, using our own brains God has given us, to see what we can do with it so as to make contributions? I think that is where we are. Education in all its ramifications. That includes research and development. They're not investing in it, and we're urging they should do it.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Prof.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Lawani. Thank you, Professor Umo. If I may just add on this note, my instinct tells me that the fact that we can talk about indigenous knowledge systems infers that we have some things that are original to us, that are not even things that we need to look for. That means before we talk about current innovations, we have something within our indigenous communities that are knowledge systems that will compete, globally. So, but the challenge that I have is the personalization of issues of patents or issues of ownership. I know that one of the AFCFTA documents talks about protection of indigenous knowledge products. And the challenge is that most of these knowledge products are couched in community because there's no authorial reference to say that, okay, this was the person that said that Lalatoro Kele Lumbo, for instance, in Yoruba, or some other, knowledge products that we have across different cultures. So I'm looking at, is there a way, like Professor Lawani said, to Africanize these patents, to look at the unique context of Africans in the communal venture of knowledge production, to say that we do not need to start fighting for individual ownership. We can actually talk about some kinds of innovations within communities that communities can actually own as a collective or as a commune, other than looking at how this capitalist model of individuation of benefits and stuff like that. This is just what came to my mind as this discussion progressed. Our time is fast spent. I don't know whether you have one last comment, each from Prof, our author, and also Professor
Let me say
Lawani,
something quickly. I want Prof to have the last word, so I'll just say something and yield the floor. I want Prof to have the last word on all of this. So what you've mentioned now is it's one of the arguments that we try to ignore when you are really struggling to develop. And the concept or the idea of whether there should be a dichotomy between the individual and the community, you've made it, the way you asked the question or you framed it is it's simplistic, and that's good. But at the core of it is the argument over capitalism or communism, really. That where do we draw the line then? Because when the individual performs, there's no individual who gets to the point of that level of productivity of knowledge or ideas that didn't have any kind of support framework. Even in the highly capitalized nation, they know They subsidize education, they subsidize transport, they subsidize their parents' social security. So, but then they will say, oh yeah, it's the individual, it's the individual. You know, you pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You're free to take your talent to the market and make as much as you want. And then the converse side of that is the communist ideology, which says, no, anything you make belongs to all of us. You now decide on what you take from what you've made. But Africa, really, we don't have time for that conversation. So you're right. We have to find ways to localize our problems and find localized solutions to them. But I want to end on one note and throw out a thought. What are the possibilities, or what are the chances that if we didn't get so terribly devastated by result of colonization, what are the chances that we will be where we were? Knowing, for example, that there was a university in Timbuktu in the 12th or 13th century. Knowing, for example, that the Great Benin Empire had a moat constructed with solid technology to fortify and protect the entire city. And that the Portuguese himself came and declared that they hadn't seen boulevards that were lighted at night in any other part of the world until they came to the Benin Kingdom. Knowing, for example, that in some parts of Southwest Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, there are ancient technologies, there are scripts that date back to the 9th or 10th century on how the society was structured in a way people were getting compensated for what they were doing in an organized format. The farmers, the herders, the graders, they were struck before colonization. And so that the balkanization of the continent now makes it even difficult for us to have cross-border trade with our immediate neighbors, right? So to get a flight from Lagos to Niamey, I have to fly first to Paris to come back to Niamey. But there were caravans connecting all of these parts of Africa before the colonial masters came that got us from Timbuktu to Agadez, from Dakar, from Ziguinchor to Mombasa. There were caravans plying all of Africa. They were not paying any, they were organized societies. So, but then they split us along these lines. They marketed us to their own benefits in the Berlin conference, and we are where we are today. But like we say, there's a reason for knowledge, and Prof mentioned it in the book, quoting one of the authorities he referred to in the book, that for you to get more knowledge, you have to have some residual knowledge, and that you have to be a lifelong learner, so that the foundational knowledge you have is what leads you to more knowledge. So without the foundational knowledge, it is hard. Without the template, it is hard to nurture. And I agree. So knowing what we know now, where we are, we have to find ways to indigenize the solutions to our problems. It's the only cheap, they are relatively, they are cheaper than constantly looking for imported solutions anyway. So I rest my case on that, and I yield the floor to Prof.
Okay, you wanted me to, thank you. You wanted me to give the last words or remarks. I really don't have much to say, except to first thank you for giving me the platform to engage in this conversation surrounding my publication. Thank you so much for appreciating one's humble efforts in putting those thoughts together, at least for knowledge seekers to take a look at and see what they can benefit out of it. I often of the opinion that there are all these ideological arguments exist. Communism, capitalism. To me, I would ask the question, what do they want? Is there a common link, a common thing people want? People are under capitalist systems and communist systems. I think if we look closely, people want good life. Chinese want good life. They come to Africa and other parts of the world to look for a good life now. And well, the capitalist world had established. I mean, we don't hide the fact that we want good life. under capitalism. Though everybody wants a good life, but it depends what probably creates a problem is the strategy for getting the good life. So I don't always so much engage in that debate. I think we have to design a way for getting the good life. Again, colonization exists. So many countries were colonized. Even the European countries were colonized. If you study the history of different empires, and they got out of it. And we in Africa should get out of it and not use it as an excuse for not doing something to help ourselves in terms of the technology we find ourselves, the new world we find ourselves. So I think we can take note of things in the past, but not allow those things to hold us back from exploring the opportunities both within our own society and outside our society. We can do this, but I still emphasize the need for investment in research and development if this knowledge must be captured for our use. So once again, I thank our Author Spotlight and its sponsors and hope that there'll be further future opportunity for us to have this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Just to read one final comment from Dr. Husseini, which I think is important to our discussion. The politics of knowledge production has its own economic effect, I think. I think African states or leadership or government has to engage with the challenge of akrasia, weak will, to get out of the economic quagmire fostered by the discount of indigenous capital or knowledge production as it is. So that's just to also emphasize the need to look inwards in all of this. Without further ado, I think we need to thank our guest author, Professor Joe Umo, for the wonderful time we've had with him, drinking from his wealth of research, thanking him that he's retired but not tired, still helping us to, learn from the efforts that he has made in the past and he continues to make in the present. We thank Professor Lawani, an integral member of our center, for helping to discuss this very important work and also for committing to make copies available to those who are willing. I'm yet to receive any requests. If you still have, if you're in need of the book, let me know, then we'll get across to him. And I'm sure that we'll get it across to you wherever you are. Thank you everyone for joining us. We are grateful. Professor Olonyomi is here with us as well. We thank him. He's also an integral member of the center and has been making comments. We look forward to having you at our subsequent event. This is our last public event for the year. We're looking forward to having you at our events in 2025. And we pray that everyone would have a very successful and happy ending to the year, and we'll start the new year with full and good vibes. Thank you, everyone, and all the very best for the rest of the day, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Awesome.